Hi, welcome to Crafting with Kristen. Today we're going to be making a cool blood-splattered, shredded up, and covered in all sorts of metal hardware band t-shirt like this one I have here. All you're going to need for this is some sewing scissors, some bleach and tie-dye. Tie-dye is not just for hippies. And some metal hardware like eyelets, rivets, studs, that kind of stuff. I got this band t-shirt off Indie Merch Store. They didn't sponsor this video, but they're one of my favorite spots that I always buy band t-shirts from because they have a bajillion bands on there and everything's officially licensed, so you're still supporting the artist, but you don't have to go through a million different bands' websites and pay shipping for every single item. I have everything you're gonna need listed in the description below, and I'm gonna walk you through step by step. Let's make some cool clothes together. Here's all the supplies you're gonna need. I recommend wearing some safety goggles so you don't get bleach in your eye. You're gonna need some bleach, water, some containers to mix everything in, or some rubber gloves to protect your skin. I'm diluting the bleach in water. Some people will just apply the bleach straight onto the shirt, but sometimes you can deteriorate the fabric and it won't hold up as well in the washer and dryer afterwards. So I'm doing about like a cup of bleach, just diluted to a whole bunch of water. I'm getting some rubber gloves on to protect my skin. And I have a little container that I got from like a 99-cent store that I'm putting my bleach mixture in. I think it's like for like ketchup and mustard or something. But I'm pretty much just filling that up and I'm just spattering it all over the shirt in a random pattern. I also have like a little brush here, a little sponge one that I'm using to kind of get some little markings on there. Just dipping it in my bleach water. You can also use like a small little like paintbrush. Now I'm getting the back of the shirt. You can already see the bleach is starting to activate. It's kind of turning like an orangish color. If you're going to be dyeing it with a lighter color afterwards, you're going to want for the bleach to activate even more. But if you're just doing like red or orange or a real dark color, then it doesn't need to activate that much. Once you feel that the bleach has activated enough, you can go ahead and just rinse it out with some water. You could do it in the bathtub, but I'm just spraying it down with the hose out here outside. And try to rinse as much of it out as possible. Next, we're just gonna drop it in the wash. Just wash on a regular cycle. Or you could even just rinse it with water and just run it without detergent. Either or works. Now I'm going to be mixing up some soda ash and water. I got this from Dharma Trading Company. The link is in the description. And I'm just mixing it up with some warm water according to the directions. And the purpose of this is pretty much just to help the shirts absorb the dye and for the colors to come out more vivid. So everything that I'm going to be dyeing, I'm just soaking up in this liquid. And you can either run it through the dryer on a pretty much just a tumble cycle to get it nice and like damp where it's almost dry, or you can just lay it out in the sun like I'm doing. Next, I'm going to start mixing up my dye. I also got this from Dharma Trading Company. Their dyes are really great. They're nice and vivid, and they're pretty reasonably priced. I'm mixing up the dye powder with some urea. Don't worry, it's not real pee. And some warm water. And you just want to make sure that you get it really nice and well mixed up. That's going to get your dye on there real nice and even. Now that I've got that all nice and mixed up, I'm gonna lay all my items into the bin You could also do this in the bathtub, but I'm just doing it outside to avoid accidentally dyeing anything that I don't want to dye. And I'm just getting everything fully saturated. After I squeeze all the dye in there and get these nice and saturated, I'm going to let them sit for about a day just to really soak up that dye. And then once you've let them soak for a while, just go ahead and rinse them out with some hose water or rinse them out in the bathtub or sink. I'm doing it outside once again to just save getting dye all over my house. And this is the really tedious process. It takes forever to rinse all the dye out of here. So I'm pretty much just going back and forth with this bucket, getting the clothes soaked, wringing them out over the rocks in my backyard, and repeating. At a certain point, the water will start to look clear enough to where you know that you're ready to throw it in the wash. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you want to get most of the dye out of it. You'll run it on a regular wash cycle and dry it afterwards. Now we're ready to start cutting it up. I'm cutting the collar off of this one and hacking the hem off of the sleeves. I'm going to repeat the same process for the hem on the bottom of it. And now I'm just going to make little cuts along the collar, just kind of at random. And I'm stretching them along just to kind of see how I want the design to go from here. And I'm taking off a little bit more of the collar length just to give it kind of like an off the shoulder sort of fit. And now I'm going to start cutting down along the bottom. I tend to do a triangular pattern, either pointing up or down. It works really well with this shredding technique. It just makes it look really cohesive and it makes the drapes look really good. Now I'm doing a lot of these little small cuts along the sleeve and just stretching them out. And I'm going to do a whole bunch of slashes, just kind of following that little square design up the center of the shirt. And I'm going to repeat the pattern on the opposite side of the shirt as well. Sewing scissors work a lot better than craft scissors for this sort of project. You can theoretically do it with it, but it's a lot harder to cut through the fabric in nice, like straight, clean lines with craft scissors. So I recommend getting a pair of sewing scissors. I'm making all sorts of random little nicks along the bottom logo. Sometimes I even kind of hack a little bit into the lettering. And I'm still widening up that collar. It's better to do things like this slowly and just take a little bit more off each time than it is to just do one big cut. It's a lot easier to make an opening bigger than it is to make one smaller. And now you can see the little patterns that I'm doing on the sides of the sleeves, kind of that larger one working its way up to a smaller one in a triangular pattern. The more you do cut patterns like this, the more you'll get comfortable with actually taking scissors to the project. The first couple times I did ones like this, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to ruin the shirt. I don't know what I'm doing. So it's really great to practice this with a shirt that you don't care about. And then when you start to feel like you got the technique down, then do it to one of your favorite ones. Now I'm just cutting those slashes up the sides of it and along the sleeve on this side, just giving it some balance. up more of the side of this shirt. I really like doing slashes up along the sides of the shirt. Kind of makes it drape nice and loose, but it also kind of opens up the shirt so it shows off your figure a little bit more. And just really get your fingers in there and stretch the fabric apart and open up all those holes. Usually after a wash or two, they will also start to kind of have more of a worn-in sort of a look to them. And I think I like the front of the shirt, so now I'm going to get to work on the back. I'm just cutting a whole row of slashes down the center of the shirt. Once I get to the bottom, I'm just going to stretch all that out with my fingers. And now I'm going to do almost sort of like the back of a rib cage sort of a design along either side of it. So starting at the small of the waist and working my way up. This is much easier to do with a mannequin, but you can still do this while you're laying it flat on a table. I just recommend trying on the shirt and kind of marking where the proportions of your body are and constantly trying it on as you make cuts to see where you want to cut next. Also, if there is a friend that you have that trusts you with a pair of sewing scissors, you can always make them put on the shirt and cut it while it's on them. And I feel like I just need a few extra little cuts down towards the bottom just to give this shirt a little balance. And I'm doing that triangular cut pattern where I start with a large cut and I'm slowly making it smaller as it goes up the shirt. And I'm just making a few extra little cuts here and there. Generally, when I do projects like this, I just kind of cut as I go, and I'll take a few moments to just kind of step back and look at it and see if I feel like it's done or whether I feel like it needs a little bit more cuts just to balance the look. And after giving it a good once over, I think it's time to go ahead and braid up the shirt a little bit, just on this one little area where I did all the slashes up the back. So I'm just feeding each little stretch of fabric into the one beneath it. There's actually a really great demonstration of this in my slashed and braided leggings tutorial, where you can see up close how to do this, which I have linked right here. And I'm just going through, widening up some of the slashes, just so that I can check if it fits perfect. And I double checked it in the mirror on myself since my proportions are a little different than my mannequins, and with a few quick adjustments, it should fit me just perfect. widen a lot of the little slashes and adding little secondary ones right next to some of the existing slashes. I definitely like really distressing shirts like this as much as possible. And I know I said it was no-sew. You can do it no-sew by taking that little braided part and just cutting the last slash and knotting it together. But I wanted a little extra security, so I'm gonna go ahead and just sew it down. Now I'm ready to start adding the metal hardware. So I'm taking a watercolor pencil, or you can use tailor's chalk, and I'm just measuring about 2 centimeters apart and just making little dots, and this is gonna indicate where I'm gonna put all my little metal rivets on this top. I also think I want to add some eyelets just for a little extra pizzazz, so I'm just going ahead and kind of laying them on top of the shirt to see where I want them, and then I'm marking that with the watercolor pencil. Now I'm taking a sewing awl, and I'm just putting a light puncture through each of the little dots. I'm not going all the way through with the tool because I don't want a hole that's so big that the rivets are going to fall out of the hole. So I'm just taking the tip of it and just giving it a little poke. And now I'm just inserting all these little metal rivets. There's a little part that looks like a nipple that is going to be on the underside of the shirt, and you're just going to poke that through and then place the cap on top and push it until you hear it snaps. It might feel like it's secure in there, but you're going to need to set it with either a hand tool or a stud press to get it secure in there. It's definitely a tedious and time-consuming process, but I really like the accent that this gives to a top. And when shopping for rivets, if you're not doing a project that has a lot of layers of fabric on it, I highly recommend trying to find something with a short post length. Otherwise, it's when you set the rivet, you're either going to have a lot of extra space where it kind of wiggles around, or when you go to set it, it's going to kind of warp it when the longer post goes through a thinner amount of fabric. Just about done with the tedious task of getting all of the rivets in place and ready to set. Now that that process is done, I have my stud press out. In some of my earlier videos, I showed you how to do this with a hand tool, but I'm going to be using this stud press that my mom got me. Thanks, Mom. Basically, you put the cap side of the rivet facing down and the post part facing upwards, and then you just pull down the lever. And then you just repeat the process over and over again, and it'll set everything nice and tight and perfectly in place. And each different type of rivet will have its own unique tool to screw into the stud press. I believe it's called a die. There's a shop that I buy a lot of my press tools and my rivets from called Make This Margot, which is linked in the description. Now that all those are set, I'm ready to switch the dies so I can start adding some eyelets. I'm going to do a variety of sizes, so I'm going to be switching back and forth between these dies. And since the eyelets are a little bit bigger, I cut a small hole instead of just using the hole from the sewing hole. And you're gonna feed the eyelet through, just like that. And then you're gonna put the little flat piece on top like that, and it's gonna be facing up, and just press the stud, press down. And we'll set it perfectly in place. And I'm just gonna repeat this process with all my different eyelets. I'm gonna do a variety of different sized eyelets just to give it more of a random look. And now I'm ready to change sizes so that I can put on the smaller eyelets. There you have it. Every now and again, you just gotta add a few more. Sometimes I've even gone back to projects that have been hanging in my closet for a while, and I'm like, it just needs a little bit more of something. When in doubt, add more. And here's our finished product. If you enjoyed watching me make this project, make sure to subscribe to my channel and leave me a comment on any sort of projects that you want to see me make in the future. Thanks for crafting with me.